Welcome to another episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grosville, and joining me today is Mark Morningstar. And Mark sent me this fantastic bio of just all the things that he has done. And I just have to say they almost all revolve around his passion for music. He was a percussion music education and instructor, a drummer, a percussionist, and a jack of all trades, master of none, as he says.
Yeah.
Some of the things that he has done, he marched in the Base Air Force Drum and Bugle Corps units. He also did that through a tech school in Denver. He was stationed at Eglin Air Force Base in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. And after leaving the service, he went back to his hometown and started teaching high school percussion. And he was a rock band drummer for several years, which he left to pursue family life and settle down. Today he is retired, but he's still a consultant to area music programs. He says, as you can see, music is my passion in life. So welcome to the show, Mark.
Nice to be back to see you again, Melissa. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you were able to join me today and actually get this conversation down on video for everybody else to share.
Yeah,
because I just loved everything about all the stuff that you've gone through and what you're doing for the world. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right. So where do you hail from, Mark? Where are you living?
I live in the center of Pennsylvania, about 40 miles south of Penn State University main campus, a little town called Huntingdon, spelled with a D-O-N, not the T-O-N like West Virginia. So, but yeah, it's just a small town. You know, long time ago it was an industrial town, but things have, as all small towns go, things have left the area, and well, you know, we're just kind of left with how do they put it here? Nice place to retire to.
Having grown up in Pennsylvania, I do very much understand that, and it's interesting. As we're recording this, yesterday was Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
I love to watch the movie. I watch it every year on Groundhog Day. It's one of my favorite movies. So how far away are you from Punxsutawney?
About an hour and 50 minutes, almost.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Because my husband said to me last night, he said, one of these days we're going to have to go to Punxsutawney. I want to see what this groundhog thing is all about. So
that's a busy place on Groundhog Day, I'm telling you. So
well, maybe not go on Groundhog Day, but just go and see the town.
Yeah. Yep. It's a nice town in its own right too, as well. So.
Okay. And you were a rock band drummer in the late 80s, early 90s. So were you part of the glam hair metal kind of rock scene, or were you more the classic rock?
We thought we wanted to be, okay. It was kind of a mix of both, a little classic rock, the cover tunes that we did. Of course, we wrote our own stuff, but nothing ever went popular. So yeah, kind of a crossover between the both. Let's just put it this way. I don't look good in spandex, so it's all right.
Or all the makeup and the big hair?
I didn't. I referred my other bandmates. They were able to have all of the long hair, but for some reason I didn't. I referred to my hair, which it was a lot more puffier than what you see it now, but referred to mine as a white person's version of an afro. So that was the best that I could do.
Oh, those were definitely the days. That's probably one of my favorite genres of music of all time, is that hair metal. I listen to Hair Nation all the time on satellite radio.
Yeah. It was fun. I will give it that much. But then some of the luster wore off, and it's like, okay, and birth of my daughter, and so that just took me a different version of a different road. And I'm like, yeah, I need to go this direction. So, and I'm glad I did. So we're okay.
It's a little hard to do the family life and be in that kind of lifestyle too.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You get people like John Bon Jovi who can do it and have been married for 40 years, but it doesn't necessarily work for everybody.
Yeah. Well, what a lot of people don't understand is you get to a point where you get to be fairly popular, and then everybody wants to come in and join and help, and then they want a piece of the pie, and it just goes from there. It's like, you have to determine whether it's worth it or not, and that's what you want to do. And that's where I was at that point in time. So,
okay. And the rest is history, right?
Yeah, yeah. Moved on to teaching students.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, well, Mark, I want to get into this because your story is just absolutely phenomenal, and I really want people to hear your story and to, to hear about what we're going to talk about today. So I
Mhm.
want you to take us back to, around the time that you were diagnosed and what was going on in your life and how did you get your diagnosis?
Okay. Um, as I had told you before, on December 14th, I was watching Monday Night Football and went to sleep. And, well, through the course of the early morning hours, I found myself throwing up a little bit of blood, well, a fair amount of blood into the kitchen sink. And, like, I ended up in the emergency room through the course and action of all the quick work over there. Found out that, like, hey, something's not good here. It's, this is wrong. And through CT scans, MRI over the course of 3 days, showed a couple spots on my liver. Okay, I had no warnings whatsoever. Okay,
So no symptoms before throwing up blood.
well, no, that's not good. But at any rate, they they said we would like to refer you to one of our colleagues out in Pittsburgh, if that's okay. So we did, and December 27th, I met with Dr. David Geller out at UPMC Transplant Institute, Thomas Starzl Transplant Institute, and was told it's like, well, okay, you have stage 3 liver cancer, hepatocellular carcinoma, and you have cirrhosis, and you have esophageal varices, and which is treatable, but you're going to need a transplant. So that started the whole ball of wax moving, and so what could have gone wrong did, and it just kind of left me there in awe. I was like, wow, okay. Not that I was completely distraught, but I was the one thing that one saving grace that I was happy that he didn't say was at least it wasn't stage 4 terminal. So there was that little glimmer of hope, I'm like, and I clung on to it. And so from there on, we just, there was a lot of procedures, a lot of testing. They did put me through a dosage of chemotherapy. It was a chemo immobilization uh, through your main artery, and so what they did is they delivered a dosage of chemo right directly to my liver, and they needed to knock that down to a stage 2 before they would even entertain me going on forward with a transplant. And so that happened, and then afterwards, more tests, more procedures, and things worked its way along. So there we went.
So we talked about before we went on, we talked about that, liver cancer is the silent killer. And so you had no other symptoms and nothing to even warn you until you started throwing up blood.
Other than being overweight, and I think,
So
and
lots of people are overweight and, don't
this
have
is
liver
normal
cancer.
throughout the stories that I hear from other folks as well that have gone through similar situations like myself. Uh, the PCPs are just always telling us it's like lose the weight, and it's like, okay, and not really paying attention to the numbers, as much as they probably should. There are some different other tests and stuff that need to be, taken into consideration, and but uh, it, it is what it is. But yeah, it's a silent killer. I didn't have anything else going on other than that night. Like I said, it's like, whoops, hey, something's wrong. Whenever there's a batch of blood in my kitchen sink. So it's like, uh, yeah, this is not good. So something's drastically wrong. So, but
And do cirrhosis and liver cancer tend to go together? Does one cause the other or vice versa, or is it more of a correlation versus causation?
well, they kind of go in order. I mean, you can develop cancer through that process without it being a real bad dosage of cirrhosis. But generally, the terms go, you go from fatty liver disease to fibrosis, and then fibrosis will turn itself into cirrhosis, and then from there it'll turn itself into cancer, and then that's whenever things go horribly wrong. So once it reaches the cancer stage, then it's like, yep, that's when the word transplant comes into play. So, yeah,
Okay.
um,
And fatty
it's
liver disease is usually caused from, overweight and obesity, right?
yep, yep. Poor diet and just lack of exercise. Taking your body serious. I mean, we're not meant to be walking around this big all the time. And sorry if that hurts some people's feelings. But it's just a realization that you come to whenever you're faced with certain aspects of the problems that people are faced with, such as this. So
And then, I guess at least I have, and most people kind of know of cirrhosis as being alcohol related,
right.
but it is also a continuation effect of fatty liver disease, also.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there for the longest time, I think the general public and knowledge had always thought of cirrhosis as being, yes, alcohol related, and that was it.
And it
Well,
is,
and it is, it
obviously,
still is, but
right?
it's not just that. The whole poor diet thing and all of that, the stuff that we're fed with, the foods that we eat nowadays, the processed foods and all that stuff just are not good for us. And that's just, we have to learn that. So.
And then is transplant the only real, I guess, treatment for liver cancer? Is it not able to be, treated with just chemo and or radiation like a lot of other cancers are?
They can treat it as I was told right from the beginning out there. It's like it's treatable. So yeah. So again, through the course of the one chemo treatment that I was dealt with, uh, they were able to knock that back, to the second stage. But we're still dealing with cancer, and once it gets to that stage, it's almost an undoable, unreturnable, to normalcy, so to speak, with your liver. Once it reaches that stage, it's like, yeah, we're not standing on too solid ground here. So the
And it's not
cirrhosis,
like,
the
go ahead.
cirrhosis, the cirrhosis itself can be turned around. In
Okay.
fact, the advocate group that I belong to, we've talked to a few different people there that have had certain stages of cirrhosis, but have been able to turn that around, and I think that's just astonishing. So
Mhm.
it's wonderful to talk to those folks and find out what they're doing, and a lot of it has to do with diet and just what they're doing and their daily activity. So that's important to us.
And it's not like something like breast cancer or prostate cancer or things where you can just remove the organ. Like we can't survive without a liver.
Right. Yep.
So that leads into, and fortunately, that is one of the organs that you can receive a transplant for,
Right.
which is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. The liver, and I had no idea that this was even possible. So that day that I went out to Pittsburgh and talked with Dr. Geller in the waiting room prior to seeing him, I'm watching the screen on the TV and learning all about live living donor transplants and transplants in general and how this happens and how that happens. I'm like, whoa. And finding out that your liver is one of the other brains in the body, so to speak. I mean, it takes care of over 500 different jobs. It's responsible for 500 different things, in your body. And it's like, wow. So within like a half hour to an hour that I was sitting there waiting to go see him, I was learning a slew of information. And
That
I
you
was
didn't
like,
even know that you needed to know.
I know, right? And the big one is just simply this, and this is what baffles a lot of people, and this is what correlates with the live living donors, is that the liver is the only organ in our body that regenerates itself. So yeah, so in that regard, yeah, it was bad for me, but it was lucky that it's the liver, and so we can go through this. So yeah,
And I've interviewed a couple of other people who have had liver transplants. I actually just interviewed a gentleman who had uh, cancer of the bile ducts. I never get it right. Cholangiosarcoma.
Right.
And he had most of his liver removed, but not all of it. And that was able to fix that. And the other two people that I interviewed had deceased donors who donated their liver after passing.
Right.
And I really want to get into this with you because you did not have to have a deceased donor. You did
No.
not have to have a bunch of your liver removed and hopefully that it will regenerate. So I want to really get into this whole idea of live living donors because this is just a modern day miracle that this can happen. And, we're put on a transplant list and it could be 2 months, it could be 2 years.
There's,
There's so many, you have to wait for somebody to pass and then everything to line up, according to the stars for it to work. So share with us kind of the process of finding a live living donor and what that process is all about.
yeah. Okay. So part of my testing and all that stuff, prior to actually getting to the point where I was asked the question, do you want a transplant? I was posed that directly, and I had to make my decision on the spot, which was not hard at that point in time. My mindset was like, yes, please.
I was going to say,
So
what's the alternative?
I would like to live a little bit longer, but in any rate, so what I found out was, especially, and it's not like this at every institution, but in UPMC in Pittsburgh, they don't want, like myself, the recipient, to be the one to go out there and go looking for a live living donor. They have a program they refer to it as finding a champion. They want someone else that you're well known with and a friend or whatever, a family member, to take on the responsibility of going out and through social media, through word of mouth, through fundraising, through many different avenues of contacting people to let them know your story, your plight, to let them know, hey, would you be interested in doing this? There are certain ways to do this, and of course, there's a lot of questions that come up in regard to all of that, and how does this happen? Uh, it's just getting the information out there, and then whether or not people come forward. I had my next door neighbor. She and I were very close friends from an early age. I mean, probably from like age 12 on. We went to high school together, graduated together, but so I knew who I wanted my champion to be. And when I asked her, she said, "I'm honored." She said, "I'd be more than happy." So that was,
Now, before we get into that, so what is, I guess, is there a criteria that distinguishes between the ability to have a live living donor versus needing a deceased donor, or is it just where the medical center that you're in that they do different things for different people, or are there certain criteria to meet to have a living donor versus a deceased?
yeah, the different criteria that the living donor has to meet is, one, you have to be in fairly decent, healthy shape. Uh,
No, I mean, is there for you, for the
not for me.
patient,
Hmm.
whether a deceased donor or a living donor is the appropriate transplant?
Either or. I was placed,
Okay.
once I had my testing done, I spent 3 days in Pittsburgh doing a slew of testing and talking with a variety of different people. And once they get together, they gather up all the information. I had stress tests done. I had CT scans done. I had, a slew of other tests, that needed to be performed before they would even consider putting me on that national transplant list. So once you're on the transplant list, I had both avenues that I was searching. And one was the live living donor, and then yet the other side was I'm on that list. So if anything popped up, I was able, to be, one of the lucky ones to uh, accept a deceased living or a deceased person's liver. And so actually, I had that happen I had a call. It was about 2.5, 3 weeks after all of my testing was done, and they said, you made it on the list. I'm like, okay, great. So 3 in the morning, I get a phone call, and they said, hey, how soon can you get here? I live 3 hours away. And I said, well, 3 hours. So I was there in 3 hours, got all prepped, ready to go, but it didn't happen just simply because it just didn't meet up with everything that they needed.
Mm.
There's a certain window that everything has to happen, and it wasn't going to take place, so they had to send me home. And so I another episode like a month afterwards, and so I didn't get as far. I didn't make it all the way to Pittsburgh that time, but yeah, I mean, so you're kind of put in that position where you're on the list, and then you're looking for the live donor as well. So
Okay. All right. So pretty much anybody who is in your situation has the choice of the two, and whichever one is going to work out
yeah,
first.
yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I was posed the question during the testing: would be willing to accept to take on a liver that had, I don't want to say some problems, but uh, basically that's what they were asking. If it wasn't the perfect liver, would you still be willing to accept that? It's like, my answer was yes. So that's
Got to
where
be
I
better than the one I got.
exactly.
Right. Okay. So you were on the transplant list looking for a deceased donor, and your next door neighbor was your champion out there spreading the word about a living donor.
Correct.
Okay. So I guess how long did it take, and who ended up being your live living donor? Which I love
Okay,
this
so
story.
from like
So,
the time that I was just describing, that I went out for what they referred to as not a dry run, but they said that's a possibility of happening.
right.
Well, within that time period, the social media, the information got out there. It made it onto the local TV news stations, spreading the word through Facebook and everything else that's on online. The uh, the time period was, well, let's see, from April up to June, and things. I had been contacted by a few of my previous students and some other people that I've known in the community as well. The first one I was contacted by a student of mine. He lives in Erie, and he said, "Hey, I would love to do this for you." And I'm like, "Okay." And I was just kind of floored with that one. And he said, I'll go through and do what needs to be done. And but his it didn't come back good for him. In fact, he was very, very upset that it didn't work out. His BMI index was too large, and they said no. And that happened to a few other ones. The same scenario. It's again just going through that with the bit of like, you have to be in decent shape and health wise, in order for all of this to happen. So you know those 2 months had went by. The two times of making the dry runs, as I refer to them. Uh,
And now, did you have kind of I guess, a time frame where
no,
there was going it was going to be too late, or were you just your cancer was stable enough that it wasn't going to get a
yeah,
whole lot worse in the
the
meantime?
cancer was stable enough. That's where that first chemo treatment had brought it down to a stage 2. Had
Okay.
any of the other lab work and all that stuff, dictated any difference in the numbers that they get, then of course, then they'd have to decide what they wanted to do from there. But I didn't make
Okay.
it to that level. They said, no, you're still good, so just continue on what you're doing. And lo and behold, I mean, what was my birthday's in the middle of June, and so part of the fundraising that my champion was getting ready to do was uh, she her son, one of my former students as well, had decided he wanted to do something. He wanted to walk 100,000 steps, okay, and in a 24-hour period. And
Wow.
he wanted to do this for some type of functional fundraiser for whatever. Well, when he found out what was wrong with me, he just decided to turn that into that. That was a fundraiser for me. Okay.
Aw.
And this was one that I didn't tell you before about, but he, so he and the other director at the high school here, because they're both music teachers, and they got together and we walked around the town. He had this whole map of the town that he walked, and it didn't take quite 24 hours, but they did get the 100,000 steps in, and
That's
yeah,
a lot of
that's
walking.
yeah. My champion and myself, we both walked the first lap with him. So that was probably a good 5 miles, you know, alone. And we started at midnight. So, in any rate, uh, he we did that, and so that was right around my birthday. But prior to that, okay, just the week prior to that happening, uh, my son's best friend and one of my former students as well came for a visit, and I thought, great, it's nice that he keeps in contact and all that stuff. Long story short, we're sitting on my back deck, and he says, so tell me what's going on with you. He says, I hear that you're having all of this stuff going on. This has got to be overwhelming for you. And I'm like, yes. And I told him about the testing that I went through and this and that and where I found myself. And I just got to be patient. And he said, well, I had some testing done too. And I said, really? I said, well, what's the problem? What's going on? Are you having problems yourself? And he says, no, not really. He said, but he said, I got tested for you. And I'm like, whoa. My first reaction was like, okay, just simply because I had been through two dry runs, so to speak. So my expectations were not real high. Uh, but when we talked more about it, he said, yeah, he said, in fact, I'm waiting to hear from them today. And he didn't get the phone call at that point in time whenever we were talking. But later that evening, whenever he went home, he uh, had gotten the phone call, I guess. And so he came by again, and this was on a weekend. It was a Saturday that I was talking to him, and so he came back on Sunday, the following day, and said we were talking again. And he's sitting right next to me. He says, "So," he turned to me and he said, "So what are you doing on July 21st?" And I'm like, "Why is that?" He said, "That's the day." And what I'm referring to in that regard for live living donors, they are the ones that get to pick the day. It has to be wrapped around their schedule and all of that. And so that's how that transpired. Yeah,
Oh, wow. What a beautiful story. That just goes to show your impact on your students over the years that they want to help you in that way. That's incredible.
that was one of the things that was a learning lesson for me. I didn't realize, and maybe this is from other teachers as well, but I did not realize what you just said, how much of an impact I made on some of these kids' lives. And I was just overwhelmed with all sorts of emotions with that one. So
Oh.
it was quite the feeling, that's for sure.
And so I'm assuming it all went well.
Yes, it did. It did go well. In fact, it went well. It went better for me than it did him. And in that regard, what I'm referring to was that we went in, it was like a 12-hour day. I mean, we had to be there at 5 in the morning, and they would take him in and start his surgery before they would start mine. They had to get him opened up and do what they needed to do, and then they would do me. But again, it was over a 12-hour day for both of us. But my recuperation went better than his, just simply because he had a reaction to the pain meds that they were giving him,
Mm.
and it kept him, out of sorts for a couple of days. Where me, I was up and about, in just a couple of days, and they were like, "Wow, you're kind of a miracle person here. We're going to have to put you on a billboard outside in Pittsburgh somewhere." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." That's not ever happened yet, by the way, either. So, but in any rate, but yeah. So his recuperation, he ended up. What they told me was I would end up being in the hospital from 7 to 10 days. I was out in 5,
Nice.
and then the whole stay at Pittsburgh, it was another 6 weeks. Uh, I was home in 3.5, 4 weeks. So, but he, again, it took him just a couple of extra days to recuperate. But once he got out of the hospital, it was just like he's good to go. And the thing of it is, here's the story for him, is that he's a music teacher as well, and before he decided to do this, through the summer, all of these high schools and they get prepared for band camp, and he was getting prepared for band camp. Well, he made the decision to do the thing for me, and so he had to rely on his staff, his students, and his parents of the students to do the band camp for him, and so they did, and it was quite the teamwork. But and then he made it back for the last week of band camp.
Aw.
Yeah. So and if anybody could get a lot of applause, boy, he did from those folks. I'm telling you, they were in awe with what he had just presented.
Wow, that
Yeah.
is amazing. And as you said earlier, the liver is the one organ that regenerates.
Yeah.
And so, sure, you both have fully functioning livers at this point
Yeah.
because it grows and regenerates, and it's a marvelous and amazing organ.
Yeah, that's the biggest question I get from everybody. It's like, well, how's he doing, and how are you doing, and how does the liver? I mean, is it what's it like? And it doesn't grow back the 100%, but it grows back anywhere from 95 to 99%. And so I believe that that's where he's at. I know that's where I'm at. I'm at 95%. So it's like very good. Uh, yeah, we're both doing good. He's thriving, and I refer to these as my bonus years, and so I look at it, and I'm a walking miracle. I mean, because what did go wrong happened, but in such a short time span, within what 7 months, uh, what could go right did, and it's all because of him and his decision to be a donor for me. So I
Mm.
didn't, and trying to repay that back. How do you repay somebody back, for doing that? So, and my only method of doing that is to help other people, like this right here, telling my story. Uh, I'll be soon doing a program called Heart to Heart, and it's through the advocate group that I have that I'm associated with. And it's just basically anybody who's out there having a hard time going through whatever it be, cirrhosis or fatty liver or whatever, because all of this time period I've learned quite so much about it, and so I'll be more than happy to any questions that I can answer. That's not medical per se,
Right.
but morally, or if there's anything else that I can do for you, that's where I'm at with all of this. So
And what is the advocacy group that you work with?
Liver Education Advocates, and it's
Okay.
liveradvocates.org online.
Okay.
Okay, and so that's, if you want to, like the CEO, which is one of the gentlemen that you have talked to on your
Mhm.
previous podcast, Tony Vigliotti. Uh, he has his own story on that website. So if you want to have a little bit of a tear jerker there, just go watch that video of that, and I'm sure that you'll be. I don't want to say entertained, but it'll open your eyes to just how serious this is. So
As well as the conversation that he and I had.
yeah,
Absolutely, in a prior episode. Yes, it was amazing talking to him too, and just and his dedication to advocacy and education and, you know, helping other people to be able to get through this and come out the other side.
Yep. Yep.
Absolutely.
The other group that I belong to is called CORE, and that's the Center for Organ Recovery and Education. And it's one of the huge, large groups out there that actually, go and try to have people sign up to be organ donors, and that can be anything from eyes to lungs to heart to liver to kidneys. So I'm kind of on the edge of a knife, so to speak. I want to teach the education side to so that folks don't have to require the transplant, but then I'm on the other side helping them because I know how much it helped me. To take that into consideration of being a donor as well, whether that's a live living donor or just get yourself signed up, just to be part of that sphere of people that have already done so. It's
And both of those things can be true at the same time. You can be an advocate for both because not everybody is going to fit into one or the other category. So
and
you kind
that's
of
where I
get both
find
sides of
myself.
the spectrum.
That's where I find myself, and that again, it's like me paying it forward. I'm like, well, I'll do whatever I can, and that's where I'm at. So
And I always highly recommend that people consider becoming an organ donor. You know, here in Colorado, I don't know the way it is in other states, that when you renew your driver's license, you can just sign a
right,
little check mark that you're an organ donor. We have little hearts
yep, yep,
on our
same here.
licenses that show that we are. And the biggest thing is to share your wishes with your family,
Right.
because you can sign up all you want, but if your family doesn't know or they don't want to, then
There's
it's
that.
not a guarantee, unfortunately.
That's right. There's that too. So
Yes.
yeah,
And the possibility of being a living donor as well. I think liver's the only one that you can do that. So
yeah. The living donors. I mean,
maybe
there's
kidneys. You can donate a kidney too.
yep, kidneys as well. The living donors, it's a little bit different than the deceased donors. Uh, there are again certain stipulations and guidelines that each one has to follow. Again, like I had said before, that they have to be in decent shape and decent health. The ages range from 18 to 55, I think, for UPMC. Now, varying on the state, and institutions, they may have a different age bracket. I've seen it as high as 60, I think. Uh, so you've got that going, and again, they the living donors. Here's the other thing too, and I found this interesting, and we didn't go over this, but uh, so they have what refers as a dedicated donor. There's a non-dedicated donor, and then there's what they refer to as pairing. So it's like a swap. Okay, so if there are recipients who have uh, donors that would like to give but can't because of there not being a complete match blood wise, uh, they can connect with other people, other recipients who have the same problem, and maybe their donor is your match, and maybe
Mhm.
your donor is their match, and so they can go through about that. There's quite a number of those happening. UPMC themselves have gone and done over 1,000, I think, since they've started, over a
Right.
thousand live living donor transplants. So that's pretty impressive.
And they think of everything. I love that pairing idea that, you can donate for someone,
Yeah,
but have it be somebody else if
yeah.
you're not compatible, which is wonderful. All right. All right, so Mark, where can people find out more information? You mentioned the liveradvocates.org. What about the core group? And if people want to reach out to you, if they want to chat with you, get more information about you, what's the best way to reach you as well?
I'm on Facebook daily.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you look up my name, Mark, a Morningstar, that's who you're going to find. You'll find my white hair, and once you see the white hair, you're good. Uh,
Okay.
so you throw me the message that way. I mean, I can give you my email address. I mean,
I have it, so we can put that in the show
yeah, that's
notes
fine.
as well.
But other than that, I mean, and that's part of this new thing that we got going on with the advocacy group, this heart to heart. That's what's happening within that regard. So being able to contact me, it's almost like setting me up with a day's worth of, you know, calls or contacts, and if they wish to talk to somebody like myself, then I'll get a call. We'll see how it goes. I think we're going to start that here in the middle of this month here. So
Oh, that's very exciting.
yeah,
I'm excited about that. Yeah, absolutely. And then what is the website for the core group?
it's core.org if I'm thinking about that right. Just
Okay. Well,
if you punch in the letter CORE, uh, it'll come up. So
okay. And it's the Center for Organ Recovery
and education.
and Education. Okay, great. Well, like I said, we'll put that in the show notes as well. Okay. All right. And Mark, I ask this of all of my guests at the end of every episode. So if you were to come across somebody who is just diagnosed with cancer or in the midst of overwhelm of a new cancer diagnosis, what's one piece of advice that you would give to them to kind of help them through those early stages?
Stay positive. Don't take yourself down that rabbit hole of being depressed and everything. Years ago, I mean, for that diagnosis of cancer, okay, scares the living daylights out of everyone. I don't care what age you are. It just you've got to keep yourself in a positive light, regardless how bad it is. Okay, if you do that, and I just, I mean, morally, I think that's just the best way to be. Uh, I mean, I don't know. It depends on the person, I guess. But the other thing is too is just be kind yourself. Okay, uh, just because you have a certain stage of something going on doesn't mean that you're going to run into someone else that is maybe a little bit worse off than you. So keep that in perspective, and just stay. Again, it's you got to keep the positive attitude. Uh, that's the biggest thing I can tell people, and be kind. I mean it's the
You never
human
know what other
it's
people are going through.
it's the human thing to do. So
And that is perfect. Perfect advice. Stay positive and be kind. We could all use that whether we're going through something big or not.
yeah, true.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you so much for your time today. This is such a great conversation, and it's a really important one that people need to know about. So I really appreciate you taking the time out to share your story with me and with the audience. And I know that people are going to get a lot out of it.
Well, I hope so. And again, if they want to contact me, feel free. Like I said, I'm on Facebook. So just, hey, I saw you, da 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 da.
Okay.
So just go ahead. So
Okay. All right. Well, have a wonderful rest of your week and stay warm.
I'm trying.
All right. All right. Take care, Mark.
Thank you, Miss Lisa. Take care.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.